And how it works. For some people that are a little bit advanced in Ember, it might be a little bit low level, but I hope there's like some tricks that you might not know yet. But and I also have to excuse myself because I thought the meetup was tomorrow, and I also planned to work on the slides tomorrow. So I suddenly had 8 hours less of time building slides. So it's a bit short, but I'll see what I can do to make it interesting. So my name is Marten Schilstra, and at the interwebs I'm at Marten de Mus on most social things. I work for a company called DockYard, and DockYard is a consultancy in Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States, but we're also trying to conquer the West Coast in San Diego. And well, little just me works in the Netherlands. And I'm the only employee outside of the US, if you don't count the one that just moved to Canada. So, yeah. We work with a tech stack which is Phoenix and Ember.js. We try to have all our engineers be like really good at those two to like be the best consultancy around. And to be the best consultancy in Phoenix, we even hired the creator of the Phoenix framework. So I hope we're the best. So what do we do? Well, we build full stack apps, but we also can do like small feature development on an existing app or rebuilding stuff. But we also do consulting, so like a 1-week engagement, like telling you like this could be done better, or you can do this or that, or anything you want. And well, we also do training soon. So if you want training like for 2-3 days, learn Ember really well, then we do that soon. So Ember.object. And this talk is rather short because I didn't have much time on slides. So if you have questions, if I don't explain enough about the concept, then please ask questions so I can stall for time. So with further ado, like Ember's object class is like the underpinning of pretty much whole Ember. You'll use it everywhere, which they state here. Like Ember object is the main base class for all Ember objects, and it consists of Ember core object and Ember observable, which is a mix-in. And for details, see those documentations. So let's do that. Well, Ember.core object does not have any documentation. It has like the 2 famous methods that probably everyone that has made a little Ember app probably has seen. So it's extend, and extend you can just see as extend as just the regular extend of like the new ES6 Ember or JavaScript class. So there's nothing really new about that, except that the syntax is different. And then create is pretty much the new of Ember for JavaScript. And but the interesting part of the Ember object is the observable class, which you can see because it has documentation. And the first thing they say about it is this mixin provides properties and property observing functionality, core features of the Ember object model. And then at the end they say, note that you will not generally apply this mixin to the class itself, but you will use this feature provided by this module frequently, so it's important to understand how to use it, which why I'm doing a talk about it. And then, one more. Get and set are like the method in an Ember app that you're probably using the most by far, and get even more than set. So let's see how get and set works. So to start, let's first see how a regular class, how you retrieve objects or properties from a object. So here I have the person class and it has a first name and a last name, or it can have a first name and last name property, and it has a function that returns the full name by joining the first and last name together, which is pretty simple hello world for a JavaScript class. So if you ask it for its first name, and we have given it first name Tom, last name Dill, named after a very famous Ember person. So if you ask for first name, you get Tom. If you ask for last name, you get Dill. And if you call the function full name, or if you ask for full name, you get the function and not the full name, which is kind of annoying. So you have to ask for, wait, why is this thing? Okay, I made a mistake, sorry. So normally if you call like full name with brackets, then you call the function and then you get Tom Dill out of it. And, oh wait, that's why, because I have added get here. So it's now a ES5 getter. Sorry for that. So ES5 getters, if you don't know it yet, they have a get and a set, and they work just like JavaScript's or Java's get and set idea. So they are functions, but if you just try to access a property, then it will just underground will eval the function and then return the value. So you don't have to call the function explicitly, it will do it for you. And which this principle is called uniform access principle. So there's just one way to access all the properties. You don't have to distinguish between accessing a property or calling a function to get a property, which reduces stress on, well, is this a function? Is this a property? I don't know. So Ember has taken note of that and pretty much does the same thing with its get and set, which I'll show right now. So here again we have the same person with a full name, but now in Ember's object model. So it has a computed property which listens to the first name and last name, and if that changes, then it will return a new first and last name joined together as the full name. So if we create Tom Dill again, and we ask for the first name, we get Tom. We ask for last name, we get Dill. And if we ask for full name, we get computed property. So, yeah, that doesn't work. So they needed an extra abstraction. So they added the get method. So now you get Tom, look at first name, you get Tom, look at last name, you get Dill. And if you do Tom, look at full name, then you get Tom Dill. With each call is just the same access principle, and you don't have to distinguish between two things, which is pretty neat. You don't have to know if it's a compute property or if it's just a normal property. But if you go back to the class, you do full name, and you get Tom Dill. If you set the first name, then if you ask for the full name, you get Dumpster Dill, which is great. But if you have the Ember example again, if you ask for full name and then ask for get or set the first name Dumpster and then ask for full name again, then you get Tom Dill. And that's because if you just set the first name as a regular property, then it won't listen for changes. So the computed property doesn't know that the first name has changed. So it will just return Tom Dill again because it does not know. So to set things, you also have to set. You have to use set to change things. And then if you get, if you get the full name, then you get Dumpster Dill. So now get and set works, and it works unified according to the unified access principle, and you don't have to worry about computed properties or functions. or properties. I mean, what the difference is. Yeah, if you get a normal object and you try to get something off of it, you will get a type error because get is not a function on a normal object. So what do you do? Well, luckily in Ember observable, this is like a simple version of it, like the real version of it is like 500 lines of code. But if you look at the get method, which gets mixed into the Ember object, the set method, you see that it just uses Ember.get this key name. So it's just a alias for Ember.get and then the object with a key name. So for just regular objects, we can just use Ember.get Tom first name, and we can get properties from regular objects using the same access principle as Ember uses. So we don't even have to distinguish between a regular object and Ember object. So if you keep going, then this just works, even for, well, ES5 computer properties. And setting also works. And that's why at DockYard we have a style guide, and we put in it like every time we use get or set, just use the Ember.get version and not the prototype version. It's to offload your mind, to not have to distinguish between a normal object or an Ember object or whatever. It's just everything works with get and set. So let's look at a different kind of problem. So if I set full name on an Ember object with a computer property, then if you get the full name, you get u.cats as we just said it. But just normal.fullname also gets u.cats, which according to an earlier example shouldn't be that. We should have gotten returned computed property. So what happened? Well, turns out that tom.set fullname u.cats has overwritten the computed property and just put the string there. So this is a small pitfall that you can run into if you use set with computed properties. So to guard yourself, you can set read only, as you can see here. And then if you try to access or set full name, then it says cannot read property full name, or cannot set read only property full name. Sorry. If you have like the time to add read only to every computed property, then you can guard yourself against these mistakes. It would be nice to have like a way of defaulting into that, but we don't have it yet. And also computed properties can have a setter itself. So if you want the functionality to be able to set it to a computed property, then you can add a set method. And now the computed property just has changed a little bit. So you now have the argument to compute it is now an object with a get method and a set method. So that's your get accessor and your set accessor, and then the set method just splits the string on the space and assigns to first name, last name. It's a little naive, so if you have two first names, then your second first name will be your last name. But it's just for the example. So now we have Tom Dale, or we create a person with the full name Tom Dale, and then we ask it for the first name. It will have split Tom Dale into two parts, and first name will be Tom, and the last name will be Dale, because if you create an object, then it will also trigger the computed properties. But I do not recommend making setters, because that's a signal that you're using two-way bindings, and two-way bindings in Ember right now is little bit of an anti-pattern. It's not like you should avoid it at all costs, but if you can do it with the data down action up pattern, which you can look up anywhere else, because that's not what my talk about is, then you should try to avoid setters and use actions to mutate your state. So let's look at a slightly complicated, or actually the most complicated thing I put in here. So I have a keyword object, which is kind of like trying to do internationalization in a weird way, because this is a totally contrived example. It has a value computed property that is computed off locale, so it gets locale and then gets again with the locale version. So if locale is en, then it gets the en property. So in this case, that would be because locale is French, then it will get the value under French, so un petit cheval. But if we change the locale to English, then it will get the English locale, so a small horse. But there's like a caveat in here, because if you change the locale to English and then get the keyword value, then you get a small horse. But if you change the English keyword to a medium horse, and now to try to get value, then you still get a small horse. And that's because the value method does not watch English and French. So it does not know if English or French, the properties change. So yeah, what do we do about it? Well, in this example, we can just add English and French to our keys, because we know there are just two keys. And then if we do this and this, then first we get a small horse, then we change it to a medium horse, and now we get a medium horse. But what if you have like 200 languages? Will you add 200 language keys to your computed property, or try it in a cleverer way? So what key do you add? Well, it turns out that unless you add all those keys, you can't in like a simple way, but you can do it with an observer. So this looks already a little bit mind-bending, I must admit, and teaching this pattern has been hard, but I'm going to try. So what you see here is an observer that watches locale, and every time locale changes, it creates a computed property that has the current locale, which is, well, if it's English, then it's English, and if it's French, it's French, if it's Dutch, then it's Dutch, has the property it watches for, and then just returns the current locale. And now I see I can just have used an alias, but that's like not the point. And then the last line here in the observer is Ember define property, this value, and then the computed property we just made, which at runtime defines a computed property. So now we have a computed property that does watch for the correct key. And now if we go through the same example, so we change the locale to English, we set the value, or we get the value, it's a small horse, then we set the keyword English to a medium horse, and now we get a medium horse because of the observer, it changed the computed property to watch for the right key. But there's like a small flaw in this code.
I had a question. Can I ask it?
Sure.
Yeah. Why do you actually create a new computed property here? Because you could just use locale, right? Because you already watch locale, then you can just return Ember.get this locale.
Yeah, that's like the problem, that if you only watch locale, that you don't watch like the changes of these two strings. So if those change, then you don't watch those. So it's
okay.
like contrived, but So that's why you need the observer to change those keys when your locale changes. But there's like a caveat, and I'm curious if anybody has enough Ember debugging skills to...
Zet dan. Je kunt druk opleggen, maar...
Nope? Nobody? Okay, well, as it turns out, if you try to get value directly without changing anything, then get undefined because the computed property is not defined yet because an observer does not get fired in it. So, yeah, we need to add a little thing extra, which is an initializer, which calls our observer when the object gets created to fire off the observer for the first time. But again, and now I'm really going into examples which have like a fault or a bug in them in each example. So again, does anybody see it? Okay, so let's try it again. Oh, this is still the sample. So let's see if you can see the flaw in this one. The same flaw as in this one.
We're not calling super?
Exactly. So if you get friends from the super person, then it's undefined because you haven't called super, so the init of the parent class does not get called. So always call super when you have a parent class. But like the power level, which is in the child class, does work because that init did get called. So we have to call this.super in the child class with the arguments, preferably so that you pass down arguments. And now if you do get friends, then you get the array, and if you get power level, then you get power level, and everything works. Yeah?
There we don't extend from person. Is
Right.
yeah, okay. So,
Okay, that's just because I missed a mistake.
yeah.
So you have just
This wasn't the test one.
yeah. So yeah. So let's see. Oh right. So this is another example. Like what could go wrong in the bottom example versus the top example?
I think the top one could go wrong because if init will change stuff if we pass parameters. Like this is not a component, but the init will also be in the component, and in the component the first one will be actually worse because if you pass down a parameter, the init will override it, right?
That's not what it is.
Yeah, this is not that. Yeah.
So the bottom one, well, I'll just show an example with the bottom one. So if you have the bottom one with just friends is an Ember array, and we create Tom and Yehuda. And if we get friends from Tom, then we get an empty array because we haven't added any friends yet. And now we get Yehuda, his friends, and it's empty. But now if we push Tom into Yehuda's friends, then if you get Yehuda's friends, then that's Tom. If you now get Tom's friends, Tom is also his own friend, because if you do straight properties, then the Ember A is a reference, and so both hold on to the reference, and so you're pushing, if you push something in the one array, then the other one's array will also mutate, because they're a reference and not a copy of their initial value. And this will also work with objects. So instead of doing a simple property, you have to set those things up in your init hook And now, as you can see, if you see at first they're empty, and now you add Tom to Yuda's friends. Now Yuda has Tom as friend, but Tom still has no friends.
Is this intentional, or it was just discovered later on?
This is intentional because this is how normal JavaScript also works.
But if you do object assign, it always gives you new, in memory, new data, right? Like new array or new object.
It copies the references or the properties.
Okay, amazing, yeah.
Yeah. So you got to watch out with that stuff. It's just, but again, this one also has a problem with it, which I'll just show. So if you push Tom to you as friends, that won't work because, oh right, I added BFFs, which is a filter of friends. So if you get a friend which has BFF true, then it should be added to the filter of friends. So Yuda gets Tom as a BFF push, and if you get friends of Yehuda, then you get friend Tom BFF true. But if you get BFFs, it's empty because why?
Because friends wasn't set as an observed object?
Sort of, you're close. So, as it happens, push is just a regular JavaScript method. So, it doesn't trigger any observers. So that's why you're close. So, you don't have, so if you call push, then all the good properties of an array are triggered. So every time you see push or anything like remove object or whatever, then you actually have to call push object or the other method with the object behind it, because that will trigger observers. And now I'm almost there. So bonus, what's Ember object going to be in the future? Well, you can forget about Ember.object because this is how it's going to look like. So it's going to look like regular objects with just simple ES5 getters and setters. So a lot of baggage in Ember computed and everything will be dropped, and in return we get what they call decorators, which is the thing with the add here, which will, at creation of the class, will do some modifications in the background and then install a ES5 getter that only will return a new value when those dependent keys get changed, just like a computer property. But obviously this is a big change, so they will wait for this until they can release 3.0, which is probably more than a year from now.
This was a proposal, right? Does it get accepted? Like,
the decorators is still in the TC39 windmill of getting accepted.
okay,
So they are pushing for this to get it accepted as soon as possible. But there's some players that are trying to push it back. I don't know why.
So there's a chance that it might get rejected.
Yeah, there's still a chance that it might get rejected. So this pie in the sky idea can blow up. But then after this, if this becomes the new object model, it becomes much faster because all the things like Ember.set has to do just go away.
Is the ampersand method JavaScript, or is that something they invented on top of it?
It's something that they are proposing to be added to JavaScript.
Okay.
It's called decorators.
Yeah. And it's championed by Yehuda Cats. So in stage 2 or 3 right now. And if it hits stage 4, then it will be accepted in the JavaScript language. So this just works like the old, like the first example, just get first name, last name, full name. You don't have to call get or think about that. It's just super easy, and that will make Ember a lot easier. And that's all I had, so it's now pizza time. yeah, if you have questions, then just ask them when you can.